feedback on that.
Frank, could you tell us about how you got started in this whole career of human performance? What kind of led you into that?
Yeah, so I played college football, and for the longest time, I thought I wanted to be a football coach. Wanted to go into coaching, and got my first opportunity at Hardin-Simmons, where they said, you can work in the weight room and you can be a football coach. And one of the things you do when you're a young football coach is you break down film and sit in a dark room, watching hours and hours of football, breaking down film. Didn't really appeal to me. Part of what they had me doing was running the weight room, and I really enjoyed that part. And had the opportunity to go do a internship at Arizona State University under a coach under the name of Joe Ken, and did that internship. Had a great time, learned an absolute ton from him and his staff. They had a spot open up, so it was a little bit of being at the right place at the right time, and being able to leverage that into a full-time position, which is how I got started in the field.
Oh, that's
I think
great.
as far as like what drew me to this versus being a football coach, the strength coach in the sporting world spends more time with the athletes than anybody, and so sphere of influence is something that's always been very important to me. And so being able to be in the weight room with the athletes in the off season, work with them constantly. The coaches are on the road in the off season recruiting, they take vacation. The strength coach is always with the athletes, and so I felt like that was a great spot for me to be, with sphere of influence being something that was a major driver for me. And so that's what really pulled me into that space.
Can you speak to about your first opportunity to actually lead a program and have uh, people under you that you supervised, and what kind of feelings did you have? What barriers were there? What excited you about that?
Yeah, so my first head job was at the Citadel in Charleston, South Carolina. And, I was young. I was 26 years old. Thought I knew a lot, but I look back now and know I didn't. And so I think that's always a powerful reminder that you can always learn. I've been doing this for 25 years now. And even now, like, have a growth mindset, know that I don't know everything, know there's a ton that I can learn. Um, Early on in my career, being a leader, it was all about the grind, and you hear a lot of strength coaches talk about that. Take a lot of pride in the grind, and working 100 hours a week, and being in the weight room all the time. And I felt like being around other young guys that worked. Fast forward a job when I worked at University of South Florida, where I met Tom, or excuse me, where I met Tom, and where we, had the opportunity to work together. Worked for a guy who didn't really respect people's time, didn't really respect people's effort, and that taught me a lot about, you know, being a good steward of people's time and energy, and trying to find a better balance between the work that you do with your student athletes, and your life. Because if you're completely burned out by, halfway through the year, you're not doing very good work. You're not a very good coach. You're not very effective. You're definitely not very happy. And so living in that space for 4 years opened up my eyes to saying, hey, you know what? Like, I need to make sure I have a responsibility to take care of my people here, and make sure that um, they've got the time that they need to go do what they need to do, reset, re-engage, before they come back to work. And so that was a big delta, or a big shift in my mindset when it came to managing people, leading people, working with people.
Excellent. Very good. What would you say is your single most important core value that you believe whenever you're working and you're a leader of those personal trainers or coaches you have under you, that you try to pass on and uphold as their leader?
Communication. I think you've got to be completely transparent with communication. You've got to communicate frequently. You've got to over communicate, because whatever my intent is as the leader, in the military, we call it commander's intent. Whatever my intent is needs to be clearly articulated to the people who are working with me. I don't ever want people working for me. I think language is important in the way you frame how you show up to work every day and how you expect people to show up for work every day is important. I don't want people that work for me. I want people that work with me. I'm very fortunate that I've got 10 other folks on the staff that are experts at what they do. They're the very best in the world at what they do. And I don't think there's anywhere in the military that leverages the level of experience that we have. I've got 3 PsyD psychologists on the staff. I've got an MD doctor. I've got a registered nurse. I've got a licensed practical nurse and an EMT. I've got a registered dietitian, a physical therapist, an athletic trainer, and I serve as the strength and conditioning subject matter expert here. But the direction that I want this program to go and the things that we're doing need to be very clearly articulated, and the why behind that. Simon Sinek wrote a great book, and if you don't want to read the book, there's a really powerful podcast, TED Talk that he did called Start With Why. And I think that that's really powerful, that you inspire people, not by what you want to do, but by how you do it, or by why you do it. And I think that that's a really great way for us to move forward, is communicate what that intent is, what the why is behind those things, gain feedback from the people that you're working with. It's my belief that feedback is a gift. You may not always want to hear it. A lot of people, like to surround themselves with yes men and people that always kind of tell them what they want to hear. I want people to tell me where they think I'm full of it, where they think I'm wrong, and help correct my course so that I can direct this in a way that's most successful for the students, faculty, and staff that we serve here. I did the same thing in college. And Tom, you remember that?
Yes.
I'd ask a lot of questions and ask you for feedback. If you see the way we're setting things up, if it could be done better or differently, I think you can learn from everyone. And so I think those are some, if it just came back to one thing, I would say communication.
Yes, absolutely. The why you talked about when our students in this class did their interviews of athletic directors and fitness directors and sports directors, that's one of the questions that they were asking was, what is the why, and how important that is to what you're doing and what you're presenting, and communicating that through the rest. So when you bring somebody in and you have the role of hiring a new coach, a new trainer, and even from the past, what qualities did you prioritize in looking at bringing them on, if you wanted to bring them on?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is they love it. You got to love coaching. You got to love what you do. If you're not passionate about it, if you're kind of lukewarm, you're not going to do well with me. I'm very passionate about what I do, passionate about the mission, passionate about the people I serve, whether that's in the military or whether that's working with college athletes. I love doing it. And if people don't have that same passion, that same energy, they're not going to blend well with the people that I have on the bus already. And so that passion and that desire to grow and improve and be a constant force multiplier for the staff and for the athletes, I think is vitally important in what we're doing.
Absolutely. So one of the things that we have discussed in class, and again, the students asked the person that they went to interview, is about dealing with conflict. Can you describe a time when you had a situation where you had to mediate or significantly step in? How'd that go? What was your approach?
Yeah, so I think people are very conflict averse, and it doesn't. And I'm not like that. I think that we've got a couple tenets in our program, and one of them is in the belly, not in the back. And so everything that needs to be, again, this kind of goes back to communication, but everything that needs to be spoken, we meet around a round table. There's no head to our table. So when we sit down as a staff, everybody has an equal voice. And so anything that needs to be said in front of everybody else. We don't, I don't tolerate the meeting after the meeting. But in the event that there is a conflict, you have to meet those things face first. You cannot kick the can, so to speak, and say, well, this will just go away eventually, or we'll deal with this later. You need to sit down and be willing to have difficult conversations. A lot of times conflict resolution revolved around my athletes and their lack of willingness to try hard, give the requisite effort that we were looking at as a program, and they didn't necessarily think that they were being evaluated fairly. Tom, I know you remember, some of our programs that we would do and the evaluations that we do on a daily basis. Kids would come back and say, well, I thought I tried harder than that today. And it's like, well, I've watched you when you try hard, and that wasn't it. A kid might not want to hear that, but like I just said, as we entered this segment, like feedback is a gift. An athlete, a coworker, a subordinate is not going to improve unless they get the feedback that they need to make those improvements. And so being able to be willing to sit down and have that uncomfortable conversation, I think is vitally important to you as a leader. And people will respect you. They may not always like you, but they will respect you for being willing to sit down and have those critical conversations and work through those things. And a lot of times, like if I had an issue with a kid, they would sit down in my office and I'd be like, all right, talk to me. What's up? And they would just sit there and look at me, they kind of slouch in the chair and they look at me. And I would just sit there and I'd be like, I'm not going anywhere. And I got nothing to say. Like, you're the one that has the problem. So you tell me what's up. And we'll sit here for as long as you want. We can just stare at each other. But I want to hear your justification for why you feel this process isn't working for you, and tell me a better way to do it. And a lot of times they would just sit there and be like, well, I really don't have one. It's like, okay, so the bottom line is you just don't want to try that hard. And if that's the issue, then maybe you're in the wrong place. But typically they would come around and be like, yeah, you're right. Like, we need to work hard. We need to work together. We need to do these things to come together as a program. It was just a matter of them not being willing to be uncomfortable. And I think a lot of people have that issue. They get put in an uncomfortable situation because things are challenging, things are hard. And so showing them that there's a way that we can do that, and communicating that with them, I think is the best way to move forward in those situations.
Definitely. I just want to say to everybody in the class out there, if you have a question for Frank, I think you can like put a hand up, a react hand. Go ahead. Okay, Breck. So Breck, if you can introduce yourself to Frank, and then your question.
I'm Breck. I'm actually a former service member, so that's why I'm asking my particular question. What made you go from college athletics into the government sector and start working with the officers and everything?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I was at the Citadel, that is a military school, was surrounded by a lot of Army officers, Rangers, Delta, those types of guys, and just really gravitated to them. Their mindset aligned well with what I wanted our program to look like, and what I wanted us to be as a program. And so really leaned on them for a lot of knowledge, a lot of leadership guidance, a lot of culture development guidance, because I saw how a lot of those things could really help us. And then when I got the head job at the University of North Texas, we had our second year there, we had a really bad year and really struggled. And I didn't think that it was because of our physical capability. It came down to what our mindset was. And so I had a friend who was a former Force Reconnaissance Marine sniper. I had been doing some weapons training with him just personally for my own enjoyment. And I went to him and I said, hey man, like, what are some things that you guys leverage in the Marine Corps in the special operations community that I could potentially bring to my athletes and help with this mindset shift? Because physically we're right there. It's just some mental blocks. And for those of you that are interested in going in sport, a lot of times you take over a program, and this was kind of my niche in the space, was taking over losing programs and flipping them into winning programs. And it's a brutal reality, but winners know how to win and losers know how to lose. And winning teams will find ways to win, and losing teams will find ways to lose. And we were a losing team. We were a really bad program. And our kids hadn't really shaken that losing mindset. And so really leaned on him, learned a ton from him, applied those lessons to my football players. And we went from a 4-win program to a 9-win bowl championship program. And there I was like, there's something to this. There's really something that I can use and leverage going forward. And so everywhere I went, BYU, I got tied in with development group, Navy Special Warfare, SEAL Team 6, for those of you that are familiar with that space. When I went to Virginia, I got tied into some MARSOC guys When I went up to UCLA, I got tied back into SEAL Team 6 and some of their senior leadership. And so those people always provided me with a ton of knowledge, a ton of foundation for the culture and leadership that I wanted our program to have. And then when I made the decision to get out of college athletics for a myriad of different reasons, we can go into that if you'd like. I don't want to bore you with all that. But I was like, man, like this is a space that could really use my help. It's a space that I'm passionate about because they've helped me. So why wouldn't I want to go into that space and help them? And that's what led me into that space, Brett.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Breck, for that question. Good question. Like I said, if anybody else has a question, just go ahead and put that hand, and we'll get you on with Frank to ask the question. So, Frank, a lot of our students sitting here are looking to go into human performance, and eventually will be in a position where they will be over personal trainers, performance trainers. What kind of advice would you give these students to start building to where they can head that direction and make those stair steps up to a leadership position of a type of a director position?
Yeah. So relationships are everything. Like we always say, like what you know will get you there, or excuse me, who you know will get you there, what you know will keep you there. And so networking is huge, and that's not just going on LinkedIn or going on Instagram or going on X and connecting with people. You need to go to conferences. You need to develop relationships in the field that are face-to-face relationships. It's very easy to go and connect with somebody on a social media platform, but they don't know you there. If you're able to get in front of them, they're able to learn who you are and what your values are, what you stand for. I think that face-to-face interaction is absolutely vital. You need to read. I don't see enough young coaches and young people who are diving into reading, and it's not just about reading the exercise physiology textbooks. I'm not here to dump on education because I think education is vitally important. Most of what you will learn that will help you as a coach is not going to be learned in a classroom or in a textbook. It's going to be learned on the floor and by doing the training and by going out and seeing what other people are doing, networking, learning why they do what they do. It's not just a matter of like, what's the workout look like? It's a matter of like understanding the why behind the workout and the training program and with the methodology and what that looks like. So that's vitally important. But when it comes to reading and leadership, those are really powerful opportunities for you to pick up on other people's mistakes. Like a person who writes a book about leadership, who writes a book about management at a high level, has already made a ton of the mistakes that you will make if you don't learn from those lessons, right? And so those are lessons that can save you time, embarrassment, getting fired from a job, if you're able to go through and glean those little pearls of wisdom from those people. Ross has a question.
Yeah, Ross, go ahead.
Hey, Frank. I'm the Director of Health and Human Performance here at SOU on the athletic side, but I collaborate a lot with the HEX group, and they collaborate a lot with me. To kind of piggyback on your last answer about expertise development as one goes through their career, especially as a younger person for our students, what do you see the influence of what we used to kind of call the 144 character problem on Twitter, where things are not contextualized well, and the new hot exercise and, the new cool, stupid human trick or whatever it might be, and how that has started to sort of shape what you and I respectively do, but also how to avoid getting trapped in some of the trendiness of things and not actually developing systems around the profession and leadership and the science of it and the art of it.
Yeah, so you said the word there that's everything to me is systems, right? So one of the things that I worked to do was really build a system of training, a methodology that we utilized that was principle based. It wasn't based on a what's the word I'm looking for? We were principle based, and that these things that we are doing, no matter which sport we work with, no matter who the head coach is, these are the things we're always going to do. we can always adapt and change our program and what the training looks like around those principles as technology advances and become more accessible to technology. Because sometimes, like when I was at University of North Texas, we had no money, no resources. We had to keep very foundational roots. But then, like getting to UVA, getting to UCLA, we were able to get a lot more technologically savvy. So then, how do we fit those things and tie those technological advancements into our principles, into the things that we know work? I had a very interesting interview a couple days ago, and somebody asked me, like, what are you seeing in the tactical space that you can then bring back into the human performance space and utilize? And my answer there is, what's old is new again, right? And so a lot of the foundational things, if you go back and look at what the Soviet sports schools were doing 50, 70 years ago in training, those things now all of a sudden are starting to become like the new rage. And I was like, oh, like, this is the new thing. It's like, shit, man, we were doing that stuff, 15, 20 years ago as a foundation for our program. I'm seeing people start bringing those things back into the fold now. I would encourage young students to get very, very good at the basics, understanding the why behind the basics, and understanding how you develop foundational strength, how you develop foundational speed, how you develop foundational conditioning, and then allow your coach's eye to kind of fine tune the art, because you talked about the science piece of it. Science piece is what it is. And I think it's important through the art side of it to understand that it's exercise science, not exercise fact, and that many roads lead to Rome. And so in order for us to get where we want to get with an athlete, there's a lot of different ways that we can take there. All of them can be physiologically sound. Not all of them are the best path for us to go. And so having a very clear understanding of what that looks like. And the reality is that's trial and error. The first thing that needs to be trial and error in your program is you. You need to be doing your own program. So if you're writing a program for somebody, you better be underneath the bar in that program and know exactly what that program feels like, exactly what it's doing, so that you can then convey that information onto your client, onto your athlete, whoever it is that you're working with. If you haven't done repeat 100-yard sprints for time, if you haven't done, I don't even know what dynamic effort squats, you haven't been up underneath that bar for an 8-week block of training, you have no business prescribing those things to somebody else. So getting up underneath there, especially while you're young. I'm old now. It's hard for me to, do some of this stuff. I'm trying as best I can to keep my body so that I can do sprints, I can do jumps, I can do throws, I can do dynamic effort lifts. I'd be lying to you if I told you it wasn't getting harder every year that goes by. But man, I take a lot of pride in if I need to demonstrate a squat, my ass can get up underneath the bar and demonstrate that squat better than any of the athletes can. Bench press, deadlift, clean, whatever it is. I can do those movements and demonstrate them at a high level. But if you're not practicing what you preach, you're making a huge mistake. The second thing is you need to learn from and be willing to make mistakes with your athletes. No program is perfect. No program is complete. Every program is incomplete by its very nature. Your athletes don't have enough time, energy, resource to train everything all the time year round. That's not what's going to happen. And so being able to prioritize things, being able to have a very clear periodization plan that you can develop and fluctuate over time is very important. And some of my biggest discoveries and some of my biggest aha moments came from getting an athlete hurt or watching a team fail and saying, holy crap, that was because I had the wrong plan. Okay, great. I take ownership for that. I take responsibility for that. Here are the things that we need to do to fix and correct that. Here's how we're going to move forward. And so don't be afraid to make mistakes, but also be willing to learn from your mistakes, take ownership of those mistakes, and be willing to move forward and change as you move forward.
Absolutely. With all this in mind and the dedication and the route to the advice you're giving about preparing and prepping for the career, how would you describe to young people or talk about balance and what do you do to take care of yourself? Yeah.
So in the college game right now, as I'm tracking, I've been out for 5 years. So I'm a little bit, I still have friends that work in that space and I talk to them. There is no balance in the collegiate space. it is a grind. And that was, I kind of saw the writing on the wall back in 2021. And that's why I got out, because I was burned out. I'll be very honest with you, very blunt. I had burned myself out. Recruiting, because the name, image, likeness has become a year-round thing. I talked to one of my former assistants a couple of weeks ago, and he said that they had been going nonstop since August without a single day off. The 4 years I was director at UCLA, I had 11 days that I was not at the facility. And, even like on vacations, I'm answering emails, I'm answering phone calls, I'm responding to text messages. It is really kind of a never-ending grind in that space. And so in the collegiate space, from what I experienced in my 20 years there, and then what I'm hearing from people now, because of the way the game has changed, the rules around the game have changed, it is very much a grind. And so kind of getting back to your question, as far as like, what does that balance look like? I don't think that there's a balance that exists in that space. I think in the professional game, they're doing a better job of it with downtime and those kinds of things, because it's been mandated. The NCAA is actually putting their hands up and kind of walking away from rules and things like governance right now, it seems like. And so I think making sure that you take care of your mind first and foremost is vitally important. And whether that is having some way to unplug from your work. I like to train and compete in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. That's something that I'm really passionate about. And that's a great way for me to detach from working. And I did this back when I was coaching as well. Detach from work, invest my mind and my energy somewhere else that the coaching part wasn't going on. Reading, I think, is really important, because you can take your mind into other places and do those things. Making sure you take care of your diet, making sure you're eating clean, making sure you're doing a great job taking care of your body through exercise, being smart about what you do. I think are other ways that you can find balance. Your relationships are going to be vitally important. Those of you that want to get into coaching at the college level, whoever your partner is as you do that needs to have a very clear understanding of what that life looks like. Because if they don't understand that and don't agree with it, it can lead to a lot of issues. And so being able to communicate that effectively and find a way to mitigate that, I think is very important. But that was another thing that kind of led me to work in the tactical space, because I get my weekends, I get my government holidays, I get 2 weeks of paid vacation, where when I'm on leave, my phone isn't blowing up. I'm not having to answer emails or phone calls. And that has been a refreshing change in the space, being able to do that.
Absolutely. So, go ahead, Ross. Again, go for it. Yep.
Whoops. I have a follow-up question to that, because I think it's a very important topic, especially for young people going into the professions around that space and then moving into leadership roles later on. Can you speak to how you see, or what changes you would make in a leadership role? One of the things that I try to do is be conscientious of all the things that you just brought up with my staff and things like that. What are some of the changes that you would see implemented if you were back in one of those roles in a more traditional space?
Well, it's the same thing I do now. Like I over communicate everything and try to plan very deliberately and intentionally so that people know what the expectations are. Like, hey guys, we're non-negotiable. We're going to be here for these 6 or 8 hours. And then outside of that, that time is yours. And if that's your lifting time, if that's your reading time, if that's your personal development time, that's fine. I tried to block a lot of the BS from my guys and shield them from that, as far as like the meetings and those kinds of things. Like as the director, I felt it was my responsibility to handle that. So like if my guys didn't have to be there, I told them to go home and not be at the facility. And I would kind of be there to kind of mitigate whatever the issues with the coaches were, or those kinds of things. If we had recruiting, if we had workouts or those types of things, like obviously we'd all have to be there. But again, over communicating with them, say, guys, here's the time we're going to start, here's the time we're going to finish. The rest of this time is being given back to you to do it as you see like you feel fit. I would go around the offices and notoriously like kick people out of work. Like sometimes guys get like roots at their desk and they're sitting there, reading at their desk, or they're watching YouTube at their desk. And I'd be like, what are you doing? Oh, I'm watching this YouTube video about training. Great, go home. do that in your living room, but don't do it here. And really try to push people out of the facility so that they knew that I was guarding their time and watching what they were doing while they were there. And just tell them, like, hey, man, if you don't have something to work on, get the hell out of here. Like, don't just sit here to sit here. We're not manning a desk. If we're not here working, I want you to go home and if there's something that you can do from your living room with your spouse or your significant other there, do it there. Don't do it here. And so trying to like push that back to the guys. And I saw that gave them a lot of appreciation for me respecting and acknowledging their time. I think their significant others respected that because at least even if they were working, maybe they were doing some of that from the house. So at least they could be present and around versus just gone all the time. But I think it really comes back to that communication piece of being really overly communicative about what the expectations are so that they can make plans to to protect their time and try to find that balance, whatever that looks like for them.
Mm-hmm. So you had mentioned earlier, Frank, about maybe it was North Texas, some of the budget concerns.
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak to about how you handled those budget concerns and the challenges of managing a tight budget versus like when you were at UCLA and you had a lot more options available to you with budget?
Yeah, I mean, most places I went to include the University of Virginia, which was kind of wild. Like we didn't have a budget. Like there was just no money. And most people think, it's Division I, there's money everywhere. Yeah. There really isn't in a lot of these programs. I think that's changed a lot in the last 5 years. But I know when I was there, we wanted to spend $2,000 on bands. $2,000 in a college football program is not a lot of money. And I got told, no, we just don't have the money for that. So then you got to get creative. You got to find ways to do more with less. Fortunately for me, coming from a Division III background, it was kind of like, what's in the weight room is what you got. And if it's not in there, then you probably don't need it. So it's just like finding different ways to achieve the same result, not dwelling on it. Like you could get real spun up or wrapped around the axle about, we don't have this and we don't have that. That doesn't do you any good. If you just bitch and complain constantly about the things that you don't have, it's just going to seed more and more discontent among your staff, and your athletes are going to realize that and feel that. And so I think just being cognizant of and appreciative of what you have and making the most of what resources are available. And then when new things come available, leveraging those things and taking advantage of it. But I think in pretty much every space, it's always going to be a challenge. Finances are tight everywhere. When I was at UCLA, we had a blank check on sports medicine or sports science, and we had a blank check on food. And we took that as far as we could. And that was great. But we didn't win very many football games. And so I don't think that the answer is always more money. I think that there's a lot of things, sometimes less is more, having Spartan conditions and having the athletes and you as a staff have to strain through some difficulty. I think that builds a certain level of resilience. And I appreciate those days because I think that's where I kind of grew the most because I had to. When you got all those resources and all that money, it's like super easy. We'll just go buy this or go buy that. We'll just have it. Whereas, when you're a little bit resource poor, you can kind of start like thinking of creative ways to do more with less. And so I value that time in my career that I was able to do those things and learn those lessons.
Absolutely. Can you talk about your greatest reward and what you, as far as how that helps to inspire you to continue to move forward with what you're doing and your passion?
Yeah. So my greatest reward is not tied back to any game or anything that we ever won in coaching. In fact, my greatest reward is kind of, I'm reaping the seeds that I sowed now versus reaping a lot of them back when I was coaching. I've got former coach or former athletes that are reaching out to me, telling me that they're getting married, telling me that they've had their first kid, telling me that they're getting into coaching because of the experience that they had with me, reaching out to me because their lives have gone to shit and they need someone to help pick them up. Those to me are the greatest rewards from 20 years in coaching because it demonstrates to me that there was a very real relationship there and a very real impact there that made a difference in somebody's life. And so I think that if you're looking for, the bowl wins or the big check or the rings or the notoriety, you're in it for the wrong reasons. If you're there for the relationships, the day-to-day interaction with your players, your kids, your athletes, whatever you want to call them. That to me is where the juice was as a coach. That's what I love the most, is just going in the room and asking the kids how their day was, how's school, how's their mom and dad, watching them do hard things together, watching them improve as a group. And now being able to see those lessons and all of that work that we did come to fruition with these young men and women that then reach back out to me and say, hey, this is an important time in my life that I feel like you had an impact on, and I want to share that with you. And so I think there's a lot there that I didn't anticipate when it was happening, but now that I look back on it, I say, man, like that was really valuable, and that's the juice for me. Like that's what it's all about.
Absolutely. So what do you think is the most significant lesson you've learned now that you wish you would have known when you were younger, just coming up?
I don't know if there's much difference. Like I felt like the relationships with the athletes was important. I think maybe at the time I didn't realize how important, but I think that just maybe the volume has gotten turned up on that, and I've gotten better at it, and I invest more in it. I think maybe when I was a younger coach, not trying to be such a hard ass all the time. Like I think that there's definitely a time and place for that, and players appreciate and respond well to high standards. And you can definitely have high standards while also being a human being, and not forgetting that part. You know, we're training humans. We're not just training robots or machines. They're people. And so I think if I was younger, when I was younger, if I had made that more of an emphasis, I think I would have done better. But I think pretty early on, I had figured that out and knew that was important, because I had a bad experience in my college football days, and my coaches didn't treat us very well. And I was like, I don't want a kid to go through what I went through. Like I want to be a better version of what that was, and have people experience a better experience than what I had. And that was really what pushed me into that space in the first place.
How about professional development, as far as maybe even yourself, but those that are working for you? How important is that for them?
It's vitally important. I profess a growth mindset for myself and for our staff. Nobody here has it figured out. We have a way forward, and I'm very happy with our way forward, but we are constantly tweaking and playing with that, getting feedback every day. We're doing this. This is the input. Here's the output. Here's the input. Here's the output. What is coming back to us? How do we need to adjust course? How do we need to fix what we're doing? Because as good as it is, I'm going for mastery, and mastery is continuous. Mastery is progressive. Mastery is what's called asymptote. It's going to get closer and closer and closer to perfection, but you're never actually going to touch that line. You're never actually going to get there. And so what I want to do is really work to make sure that from a professional development standpoint, we are seeking out the very best in the world at doing what we're doing right now, finding out what they're doing, absorbing the knowledge that they have, modifying it to fit our needs, and then applying it to our situation. And then again, looking for feedback. This is the input. Here comes the output. How do we shift course to make sure that we're providing the very best services to our end user, which in this place is the students, faculty, and staff at NDU. It might be your sports team. It might be your gym. It doesn't matter what that is, but you cannot ever get comfortable where you're at, because nobody knows everything. Nobody has it all figured out. You might have a great plan. You might have a great way forward, but it can always get better.
So as we start to round this up, when you look at your skills and your experience, Frank, what asset or strength do you think that you've brought to the profession, to the content area, that you feel has been how you've really been able to contribute to human performance?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that we did better than anybody, and it's funny. I was on Twitter the other day, and I saw a program, a very, very prestigious program in college football, doing a speed workout, and I was watching the video, and I was like, we did all of that stuff back in 2011 at University of North Texas. Like, we were playing with it back in 2008, 2009, 2010 at the University of South Florida. So I feel like developing a system of athlete development, not just any athlete development, but long-term athletic development was really the hallmark of our program, with a very heavy emphasis on player availability. We used to always say there's no ability like availability. It doesn't matter how much a guy squats, doesn't matter how fast the guy's 40 time is. If they're standing next to me on Saturday afternoons at football games because they're hurt, they're not playing the game they want, what they love, number one. And number two, they're not having fun. Like we play these sports for fun. And I think a lot of times we forget that. Yeah, games are important. Yeah, winning is important, but it's a game. It should be fun. And the kids should be able to play. They shouldn't be all jacked up because of the crap that's going on in the weight room, the other 8 months out of the year. And so developing a system of long-term athletic development where the training met the athlete where they were at in their training age and their career, and then having their bodies walk out of that room better than when they walked in. I think that's what we were able to give back to sport.
Absolutely. I want to look to you all, my students. Anybody have a question? Yes, go ahead. If you'll introduce yourself, Max, to Frank.
Hi, Frank. I'm Max. You spoke earlier about being a part of losing and winning programs and then trying to develop the losing programs into winning programs. Could you provide some light on some key points or traits of the winning programs that set them apart from others?
Yeah, so losing sucks. And maintaining a positive attitude during losing is very difficult. But I think that as the ones in the trenches, it was our responsibility. We were with the kids every day. So it was our responsibility to really drive that. To me, it was much more about culture and a lot less about capability. And as soon as I started thinking about more critically about the culture of our program and less about the capability of our program, the better we got. And if I were to point out one thing, let's say your team is going to be successful if you do this thing, it is player accountability. And it's not me telling the kids that they need to do A, B, and C. It's their teammates telling them that they need to do A, B, and C. And not just saying it, or we hear this leadership by example thing. I think leadership by example is horseshit. That's just you doing your job. You should not show up and lead by example because that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to come here and uphold the standard and follow the rules and follow the way that we do things. The truly great organizations that I was a part of, the players took the bull by the horns. If a kid showed up late, I didn't even have to say anything. They would be on them before I got a chance to even say anything. When we were a losing program, we were doing up downs and we were doing punishment for guys being late. In the winning programs, guys would turn around and see a guy late, or they would text the guy if they knew he was late and say, don't bother showing up because we're not doing up downs for you, or you lost the privilege to be a part of this group. And I think that really is where the difference happens, is where what we're doing is a privilege. It's not a right, and it's not an obligation. When your kids show up because they feel like it's special to be a part of that thing, they'll invest in it in a different way than if it's well, I'm obligated to be here. I'm on scholarship. Or I'm on the team. I have to show up. Man, I always just say to the kids, make it like a party, man. We're having Saturday workouts. Guys come and do extra. Guys come in on extra for stuff on a Wednesday afternoon. If this was a party and we were trying to get people to come to a pool party or whatever, I don't know what we're doing these days for parties, but we're trying to have a party. Would you want to just show up there by yourself and just be hanging out, listening to music by yourself? Or would you get on the phone and text a bunch of your buddies and be like, hey man, we're doing this thing. We'd love for you to come join us. So we wanted to have that party mentality from the sense of start bringing people with you, man. Organizational change requires between 5 to 15% of an organization to pivot a culture. So if you can capture 5 to 15% of your roster and get them to start holding each other accountable, to start having that mindset shift, you can see a dramatic difference. The problem is that goes the other way as well. If you got your 5% of your locker room lawyers or those guys that are always coming up with reasons why they shouldn't be doing things or why this is wrong, that's going to pull your program the opposite direction very quickly. And that's the losing program mindset. And so making sure that you have a again, coming back to communication, very clear, deliberate intent is what the expectations are, what the standard is, and then holding that standard every day. And as a coach, You cannot get tired. You cannot slip. Like the one day that you start to kind of let standards drop off is a day that you just basically said, well, this really isn't that important. We were tyrannical about it, but in a way that was like, hey, guys, you said this was what you wanted. You said you want to win a conference championship. You said you want to go to a bowl game. This is the way we're going to get there because we know the other way doesn't work. We tried that already. That doesn't work. And so if you don't want to be here for that, that's fine. Turn in your cleats. You can go. But that was really where we started to get that mindset shift with those guys. Does that answer your question okay?
Yeah, it did. Thank you.
You Australian? You Aussie?
Yeah.
Yeah? What part?
Melbourne.
Nice. Very cool.
Oh, I'm muted. Now I'm not muted.
You've been going on for like 5 minutes. I have no idea what you're saying.
I know. So you made a statement about not dropping the ball when you're trying to change that culture. And how important is that to continue to check yourself, to self-evaluate, and make sure that if this is the culture you're developing, this winning culture, if you have a fitness center and you're the director of that fitness center, and how does this have to do with hiring? How does this have to do with if you have a failing employee and what you have to do in order to continue to hold yourself to that level so that things don't slip and things become sloppy and the losing kind of creeps in?
Two things. Number one is protect your cart, and you'll hear me say this a lot when I talk about culture development, and that's just kind of like a reference to grocery shopping. I don't know if you guys are like me, but you walk around the grocery store and you can kind of look at what a person's grocery cart looks like in relation to what the body pushing that cart looks like.
Yeah.
And I'm going to leave that one right there because I don't want to get in trouble or get anybody in trouble. But like, what goes in the cart is a direct reflection of the person pushing it. And so if our organization, if our team is that cart, then we need to make sure that whoever goes into that cart or whatever goes into that cart reflects the mission and the standards and the goals and objectives of that organization. The second part is to your next part of the question is you change the people or you change the people. Mm-hmm. And so the first option is to change the people. And so that means you have to try to actually change the person that's in that chair. So if you come into an organization, you inherit a bad group of people, and it's just like, well, these are the people that are here. You got to kind of work with them to figure it out. So we need to change. And so you have to do that. There's two different things. When we talk about leadership, we talk about management. They are not synonymous. Leadership is about inspiration. Leadership is about guidance. Leadership is about relationships. Management is setting a clear set of rules. Management dictates things. We want to be great leaders that manage our people effectively and efficiently, right? And so my management style is I'm going to communicate. I'm going to lay down expectations. I'm going to have very clear schedules and those kinds of things to make sure that we're doing a great job with our processes. But my leadership style is to have great relationships with the people that I work with, communicate clearly and deliberately and intentionally, commander's intent to make sure that people know exactly what my expectations are, and then follow up on those things, either if they're above board, above standard, or below standard, and make sure that the feedback that those people need to hear and receive is given consistently. And so if that person is unwilling to change or unable to change, then you have to change the people. Then I have to get new people in here. But nothing will degrade your organization faster than having malcontents in the organization. And so if you are leading people, you have to make sure that they are the kind of people that you want in your organization first and foremost. And then secondly, if that is not the person you want, try to get them to change in any way possible. And then, and sometimes that's ugly. Like I had a guy that I love dearly. He's still a good friend of mine. He was an intern for us. He was a GA for us, hired him full time. And somewhere in the transition of being a GA to being a full timer for us, he went south. And like I had to threaten his job. I basically told him, like, as of right now, your contract will expire in August when we're done. Like, I am not renewing your contract as of right now. So you have to earn that every day that you show up for work right now, because as of right now, I'm looking for your replacement. So that was not a pleasant conversation. I cried given that conversation because I love that kid. And like, I hated the thought of telling him he had to go because I brought him there. So there was clearly some failure on my part. And so kind of to your point, like, what are the things that I did that led to that happening? I had to kind of take a real long, hard look in the mirror. But then it was like, I can't allow this to continue to go on either. So we need to shift and adjust.
Yeah, Riggs, go ahead. Introduce yourself to Frank and go ahead.
Hey Frank, I'm Riggs. I got a question. You talked about like making systems. I was just wondering like how often you kind of have to like reevaluate those systems and kind of see where they're maybe not doing the best.
Every day we're evaluating our systems. And so one of the things that we would do after every session that we would coach, we call in an after action report, and we would sit down and we would evaluate every player and what the session looked like, how the player performed, and all those kinds of things, and then evaluate our process for the day. What did we do? How were the transitions? How did we coach it? Was it efficient? Did we get the result we wanted? If we didn't get the result we wanted, why was that? How do we adjust for the next session to make sure that we don't run into that problem again? Or if it was really good, it's like, hey, that went really well. We'll repeat that and do it again. But to me, like, that evaluation of your systems is an everyday process. You have to do it every single day. Because otherwise you get underwater real quick. Like, a week goes by, especially a week like in college coaching, like where you're there for, 80 to 100 hours a week. Monday seems like it was a month ago. So if you're not like constantly taking notes, constantly working to tweak what you're doing actively, things fall aside real quick.
I guess one more question, like, how do you have like a openness to ask so many questions without maybe feeling like something could go wrong?
What do you mean? Like,
just like being able to take a lot of good feedback from people around you.
I don't see the negative there. Like I believe very strongly in my processes and my systems. The onus is on that person to persuade me otherwise, right? And so I've learned a ton by doing that. And because I don't come into this thing with an ego saying like, well, this is what I say, so this is what we have to do. I come in and saying I want to be the very best at what we do. And so that's going to require me to pivot and change because I know I don't have all the answers. I'm not that smart. And so like surrounding myself with people that are smarter than me, surrounding myself with people that are A players that are constantly thinking about the process and how we do things, and then just being willing to talk about it. I can't tell you how many times we sat down and had conversations that were like pretty contentious because it was like, well, I think we should do this. Well, I think we should do that. And kind of like working through that. But that was where the most growth in our program happened. And I didn't take that personally. It wasn't an attack to me. Like they weren't saying, Frank, you're an a-hole, like because you want to squat on Wednesday and I want to squat on Friday. It's more like, how does this fit into our program better? All of us were coming to it with an open heart, trying to do what was best for our players and achieve the best outcome. And so knowing that, there was zero threat to me. Like at the end of the day, I still sat in the chair. I was still a leader. I was still the final say. But my guys were much happier when they came to work. They came to work with ideas because they knew that I valued their opinion. And so I think that you can actually use that as a force multiplier if you're not afraid of it. You've got to be very confident in yourself and not be afraid of people questioning you, which I'm not. Like if I make a mistake, I would rather have that mistake in the office than out on the field, in the middle of a workout, or show up in the middle of a game. So I think ego is the enemy. I think we can check our egos at the door, and I think that's where I don't have that issue.
Darius.
Hi, I'm Darius. Going back on like people, like if you have guys working for you, and they're both producing, doing, and like bringing great results, but they might oppose each other. Like you might have two different ideas. Like, how do you resolve those in like a peaceful manner without maybe losing both of those like workers or colleagues?
Yeah. So we would talk about it. We'd kind of dig into the why of, why do you think this? Why do you think that? And a lot of times I would just have to make a decision, and then I would put it back on me to be the one to say, hey, you know what? I listened to the 2 points of view, and I'm going to go with this route, or I'm going to go with that route, or maybe I just say we're not going to do either one of those things because I don't like either one of them from a leadership standpoint. But a lot of times I would put the onus on myself if a decision was made to say, this is the way that I'm going to go, and I'm going to take ownership for this, so that if it does go south, these guys aren't pointing fingers at each other. And that was not uncommon. We used to do this thing called coaches school. Everybody would develop their program. So one of the things that's pretty unique about the way I ran my staff, each coach on my staff managed different position groups. So on a football team, we had O-line, D-line, which was my group, and I ran those guys and programmed for those guys. I had a guy that worked with our front seven group, which is our linebackers, tight ends, and fullbacks. I had a guy that was responsible for our outside the box guys, which is all our running backs, DBs, wide receivers. I had a guy that was there specifically with quarterbacks and specialists. They got carte blanche of their group. Like what they wanted to do was their thing. And that saved me a lot of headaches of what you just described right there. Number one. Number two, it gave them ownership in their program. So they were constantly wanting to bring fresh new ideas. Number three, it gave us buy-in from the kids because the receivers were doing one thing and they were looking down at my linemen going, well, those guys are doing a completely different workout. Well, it makes a lot of sense because I'm a receiver. I don't do what those guys do. And so that gave us a lot of buy-in. So my staff bought in because they got complete autonomy in what their program looked like. The players bought in because the programs felt very customized and special and unique just for them. And then as a group, we were able to move forward and make adjustments to help the team improve. And those types of conflicts happen. But again, like you got to meet them face first. You can't let them fester. You can't have the meeting after the meeting. We'll sit down and talk about it. Let's hash it out. Let's share the ideas. If we need to go a different direction, so be it. I'll take ownership of that as a leader. If it's a mistake, if it doesn't work, I'll own that. Maybe we pivot and try the other person's idea. Maybe we don't try either of them. And you guys just need to calm down because we're not going that route.
Great question. I know that when I talked with you before, we talked a little bit about the importance of being in the moment and being present right where I am, right where you are. How important that is to be authentically present.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's vitally important, especially if you're coaching, like a strength session in particular. I've seen a lot of bad stuff happen in weight rooms because people aren't paying attention. So as a coach, you have to be very alert, very attentive. You've got to be constantly moving around the room, coaching. I think you have to be loud to coach. I don't think people that are quiet are very effective as coaches. I think the players need to hear you and feel your presence and know you're around. Everything that comes out of your mouth should be an instruction, a correction, or an affirmation. It shouldn't be hype. Like I do not like the hype guy BS. I think that's a waste of time and energy. If you were to come watch me coach or listen to me coach, like everything that comes out of my mouth is either an instruction, it's either an affirmation, or it's a correction. Like those are the things that are coming out of me. I'm not saying things just to say them. Like we are there instructing our athletes and being present. If you are not, if your brain is somewhere else, people can get hurt. I've watched bars flip in weight rooms. Guys get stapled because their teammates aren't paying attention because you aren't paying attention. Bars get misloaded and guys take the bar off the rack because people aren't paying attention. And so I think it's very important. When we talk about authenticity, you have to be unapologetically yourself. We have this notion that we can fool people. People know, like your athletes know if you're a phony, they know if you're a fraud. I've been around fraudulent strength coaches and the kids knew it. Like they knew that guys were full of, you know what. So like when you're unapologetically yourself, when you're your most genuine self, your athletes will respect and appreciate that. It doesn't mean you have to be the coolest guy in the room. If you're just a great coach, that's what they need you to be. Don't try to be something you're not.
Exactly. Well, I think that's a great way to wrap things up, Frank. We're coming up on closing this class out. We want to thank you so much for doing this, and it's been a pleasure to have you. And I know that as I debrief with the students, I know they've been able to learn a lot from you too. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Thank you all for listening, for your thoughtful questions. You can get my email and reach out to me individually if you feel like you want to do that.
Thank you.
Connect with me on LinkedIn, or you can connect with me on X or Twitter, formerly known as Twitter. Those are the social media platforms that I use, but I'm putting stuff out pretty constantly. But love to connect. If anybody's interested in coming out this way and doing some internships or just kind of learning what the tactical space is about, I would be more than happy to share and visit with folks about that, or just anything I talked about today, or maybe something I didn't talk about.
Absolutely. And Frank, I'll be in touch with you.
All right.
Awesome.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. See you later, Frank.
Yes, sir. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.